Good morning, everyone. I hope that you've had a fantastic weekend. I hope that you're looking forward to your week as we go. Anyways, hopefully, I can help usher in a fantastic week for you guys and everybody. Um, yeah, hopefully, you guys had a fantastic weekend. All right, so let's start this off as usual. All opinions are that of my own. I have not been asked to say anything by anyone, nor have I been paid to say anything, and my opinions don't reflect anybody. That includes past, present, or future employers. All right, so next week, just a little housekeeping here. Next week, we have my sister's wedding, so I'm going to be out, and I'm not going to be doing the news. Yeah, definitely don't be expecting it next week. I will be doing the news again the following weekend or the following Monday, so there's just going to be a 1 week break. So I hope to see you all then. All right. The next bit of thing is I think we all had a lot of fun on Saturday. And I'm going to continue doing those once a month on this channel where we do something crazy. Next for November's one, I almost think that we're going to do. I'd love to have these as like surprise challenges, so maybe we'll find out some way for you guys to get them into some moderators or something and have these surprise challenges. Because what I'd love to do is something like, okay, make a Fortran microservice, and like I don't know how to do Fortran, and just have to do it on the spot and figure it out. I think that would be fun. To containerize and build a web API in Fortran in a couple of hours. So, anyways, we're gonna have some more of those in the future. I think those went really well. But the thing that I wanted to bring up with you guys is I think I want to do once or twice a week where I do an hour of coding because I'm actually working on a container scheduler per se. It doesn't just schedule containers, but it's just a fun passion project where I'm learning a lot doing it. And I kind of want to share that with you guys, but I don't think this channel is the appropriate place because it really spams my channel, and I really want to do more long form content on education and whatnot. So that being said, what I think I'm going to do is I am going to start a new like dev null log or null dev channel, sister channel to this channel, and I'm just going to do my live streams on that. And the important part for you guys is I think I'm going to move the news to that as well, because most of the people that join me for the news aren't people that join me for, or most of the people that subscribe to me aren't people that join me for the news. I think I'm going to move the news to that as well and put all my live on that. YouTube doesn't give me a way to segregate that out, so I think this is the best approach, but that won't happen until January 1st. I won't move the news over there until January 1st, so you can stay here, and we'll talk about it more in December about how the live streaming is going with the coding, and we'll make our decision in December. But if that's okay with you guys, I think that's what I'm going to do, and I think it will make it better for everyone. All right. So the next little piece of that's all the housekeeping. That's it. All right. So we can move on to the news now. All right, so as you all know, we do a little bit on security, then we do cloud news, and then we move on to some open source projects. And I actually have kind of a theme for the open source projects and kind of a little bit more discussion. So let's jump into that. The very first, Facebook rebranded to Meta. Now, this isn't surprising to me. It seems to be the tech industry way to go. Google rebranded to Alphabet, or has a parent company called Alphabet now. This seems to be something that happens when a company struggles with identity. And what I mean by that is Facebook isn't just about Facebook anymore. Facebook has VR. Facebook has a bunch of different things, and it's not just Facebook. Now, again, their main service is going to continue to be Facebook. It's not like they're not providing Facebook anymore. It's just that these tech companies start up with their name revolving around what they are. And then when they start to branch out, it doesn't make sense for the parent company to be Facebook anymore. So, anyways, I've seen it coming. Meta, there were some Hebrew speakers that were making fun of it, but there's also Hebrew words that are funny in the U.S. So I guess it means death, or is similar to the word death in Hebrew. I don't speak Hebrew, so I don't really know. This is just what I saw on the internet. But yeah, anyways, it kind of makes sense. And after 6 years or 6 generations, I'm pretty sure it was 6 years, but it was at least 6 generations, Intel is finally past 14 nanometers. But is it too little too late? I don't know. Honestly, I haven't been impressed with MacBook Pro's benchmarks. Now, I've ordered a MacBook Pro, and I will get you sometime in January probably a full review on how it is to use as a developer. But I got a lot of it for my wife to do graphic because the M1 Mac Mini didn't have nearly enough memory. But I'm worried that it's not powerful enough for graphics. Its GPU actually seems like it hasn't done super well. So that's something I'm a little worried about. But again, I will update you all 100% probably end of January because they're not going to get me. I'm not big enough to get anything ahead of anybody, so I won't get my MacBook Pro until middle of December. Yeah, it was kind of sucky. All right, enough about that. Let's jump into the security news here. And yeah, we had a big breach on iOS 15, Windows 10, and Google Chrome. So basically, there was a whole bunch of stuff that happened with this. You can check it out. I didn't dig into each and every single one of these. So yeah, if you're wanting to, definitely check into these. That being said, the WordPress Facebook feed plugin vulnerability. I don't use WordPress. I know that there's a lot of small businesses that use WordPress, and that's why I bring this up. If you have the social media feed, social media for Facebook WordPress plugin, huge vulnerability that basically lets people get admin privileges to your website. Man, these ads are horrible today. Anyways, that's Facebook Meta. I don't even know why that's there. All right. So yeah, definitely watch out for WordPress. I mean, it's the age-old problem with WordPress. I have seen it over and over again. It's not WordPress that's the problem. It's all the plugins that make WordPress what it is. Because without the plugins, WordPress kind of sucks. It doesn't suck. It's just unexciting. But those plugins just don't get maintained or are maintained by somebody that's like in high school, and nothing against them. They're doing something cool. But security isn't of their forefront. And when you're using stuff like your company's social media, you need to definitely be careful about that type of stuff. Okay, so here is the Windows. This one is, it's a privilege escalation. It's not too bad because you actually have to know the person's login. So you don't have to have an elevated login credentials, but you do have to know the person's login credentials. So basically, if you get a standard user or a networked users, you can elevate their credentials. Not the worst, but yeah. So this is the opt-in monster vulnerability for, it's currently over 1 million sites. Another WordPress plugin vulnerability. So again, be careful about whose code you trust to run your stuff. It's not necessarily your code that's going to be vulnerable. It could be somebody else's in your pipeline. So this was an interesting one. The New World by Amazon basically didn't allow it. It didn't sanitize any input. I found this really interesting because it was pretty rough. Like, basically, any input field, you could type whatever you wanted and it would go back to the server. Now, obviously, not calling anybody out because I'm sure that I've done the same. Forgot to sanitize a field. But this is pretty much all fields, which is kind of on a level not heard of. Usually it's like, oh, we found a field that's not sanitized. This was absolutely every single field in New World. So it was pretty bad. Now, Amazon did release a note that stated that the game itself had no vulnerabilities for your local system. It was basically you could cheat the system though by like giving yourself infinite gold and stuff like that on the server side. So the client was safe. Yeah, some people were pretty harsh. That they should be ashamed of themselves. I'm not sure I would go this far. The thing is, this is a pretty basic vulnerability. This is something you're taught in Computer Science 101, I think. But again, they were worried about building a game. So, yep. This one I found quite interesting. Ethernet cable turned into antenna to exploit air-gapped computers. This is fantastic. These people are brilliant. Basically taking the RF signals from the Ethernet cables, which usually is just interference and things like that, and leveraging it to jump an air gap, which is fantastic. All right, so that's it for our security. Those were the biggest security things. Did you guys see any other security vulnerabilities come up in Kubernetes? I haven't seen any in Kubernetes specifically, or more specifically Linux. I'm sure that I could have missed some. So always feel free to comment if there's one that you have seen. And definitely join the Discord if you'd like to. Any of the big ones, so like when there was an Nginx and when there was an HA proxy one, I definitely alerted in the security channel ahead of this, just so that everybody was up to date. So make sure if you want those to join that. All right, so let's talk about the clouds. Now, I notice, and I've noticed this with Amazon, leading up to about a month, which we're now into that month bracket, about a month before we jump into Ignite, their big conference, they pretty much go dark. They don't release anything of interest or anything really exciting. Just they trickle feed some little stuff. So we're gonna probably hit a pretty dry patch, and I'm actually assuming that Azure and GCP, I'm not as sure of this, but they might hold for reInvent as well. They were kind of sparse, GCP especially. All right, so this is something that I found, and these are the few things that I found interesting. So we have Amazon EKS managed node groups add native support for BottleRocket. Now, I have spoken very highly of BottleRocket. I like BottleRocket and how it achieves what it achieves. I made a video on that. You can search for it. I need to make more videos on it. But yeah, I really do like BottleRocket. And this is really good because it brings native support for managed node groups. If you don't know what managed node groups are, they're basically a way to let auto scaling happen by a node group, which is actually pretty cool, especially if you run multiple applications. You can taint and toleration stuff to node groups so that maybe a single app runs on a single node group. That's not necessarily the best way of doing it, but you could do things like this. And then it auto scales that node group to that app. And that node group can be a specifically designed group of machines to support that app. So like if you need, what is it called? If you need GPUs on a machine for a machine learning pipeline, but then the things that serve it don't need it, you can break those out by node group, and they can scale separate the node groups separately. So anyways, adding this to BottleRocket I think was the biggest thing of this week for AWS. I actually think it's a lot bigger of news than I would have held this for reInvent, but you know what? I'm not AWS. This is actually pretty cool. If you're really needing large compute optimized instances, if that's what you need, the EC2 C6i instances are for you. We're talking 128 vCPUs and 256 gigabytes of memory. That's not the most memory that you can find, but that is a lot of vCPUs. Yeah, these are the new instances, the new compute optimized instances that are out. They're wildly expensive. If you can afford one of these, the C6i 32X, you can afford a lot. But yeah, they're big ones. So like if you're serving ads or something like that that's compute intensive, this is definitely an instance that you want to look into. All right, now we're talking about AWS Fargate. Now supports Windows containers. So if you're running Windows containers, if your company needs that, if you're into that, Fargate now supports it. So that's actually pretty. Again, I would have probably, if I was AWS, I don't know that this one's that big. This is not a reInvent thing, but yeah, so definitely check that out. There is updated pricing to this, so it's a little bit more expensive to run Windows containers than it is Linux containers, of course, because there's some sort of licensing fee. So definitely check it out if you're into running Windows. Let's move on to Azure. So Azure logs.io is now a managed service on Azure. So basically, you can go click a button, get a log stack running on your Azure VPC if you like. So if that's what you're looking for, I love these managed ones, especially if you're talking about a small team. They work really well. All right, so Azure Functions extensions for blobs, queues, Event Hub, Service Bus, and Event Grid. This goes to general availability. This is just basically Azure Functions that so Azure Functions like Lambda, AWS Lambda. This brings bindings to allow events from these types of things into your Azure Azure function, and allows you to interact with them much cleaner, much simpler, and easier. So this actually is a huge expansion to their Azure function service. So if you're looking to go serverless, this makes Azure functions quite a bit better and more capable. Then we're talking about, we're talking here about Azure Spot virtual machines. So this is actually something really cool. I like this. So basically, these spot instances are ones where you don't have a guarantee that you're going to keep your spot instance. It's basically them selling extra compute and giving it to you. So the really big news with this is that Azure is now going to allow you to try to restore your spot instance. Basically, what it's going to say is if you get a spot instance taken away from you, and you wanted 6 spot instances, and so now you're down to 5 spot instances, Azure is going to try to restore that quorum. You wanted 6 spot instances running this app, and they're going to try to restore that quorum of spot instances. I think this is actually pretty big and allows you to leverage spot instances for things a lot easier. So I think it's pretty cool. I think this is bigger than I don't know, bigger than a Big Mac. I don't know even how that comparison works. I don't know what I'm saying. All right, BigQuery. So that was pretty much it for Azure. There was some other general availability things. Those were the biggest ones that I wanted to pull out. BigQuery Omni now available for AWS and Azure for cross-cloud data analytics. This was the biggest thing that happened. Really, GCP had a very quiet week. This was like the only thing to talk about. And basically, they're just bringing their BigQuery Omni to AWS and Azure. So again, this is working in their Anthos cross-cloud platform. BigQuery Omni is now multi-cloud. So yeah, if you're using that and you're wanting to go more multi-cloud, this is definitely a big step to enable that. And that's it for cloud news. Did you guys see anything for cloud news? Yeah, just again, let me know if you guys saw anything for cloud news. If there was something else, I didn't see anything in the smaller clouds either that was really notable. There's some other little topics here on cloud news that we'll get into. Some Nginx, a new service that we can talk about. But yeah, that was pretty much it for our cloud news. All right, so let's jump into some, I'm going to say cloud stuff. These two things relate to cloud, but they're also just general things that I found interesting. So here we have Dino Deploy Beta 3. Now, Dino is a multi-tenant JavaScript engine. It's serverless for JavaScript. So it's interesting. Maybe not the most useful thing because it's only if you write serverless in JavaScript, which, as all you know, that I like JavaScript less than Python. But if you write a bunch of JavaScript, this looks really cool and like it could be really simple and useful. So definitely, if you're huge into all JavaScript, I think that this is maybe a really cool platform to try out and test. So I wanted to bring it up in case you guys wanted to, yeah, try it out. I'd love to hear feedback. If any of you ever try one of these things out and are like, hey, it sucked, or hey, it was really, really awesome, and these are the things I liked, please let me know, and I can bring it up in the news later. So anyways, yep, Dino it's actually quite an interesting concept on the serverless. So I do like the concept, and their write-up was fun. So again, the links will be in the description. So this was a Nginx released this article. To be fair, this isn't a third party, but they're comparing the performance of Nginx in bare metal and virtual environments. So basically, they went through all their testing methodology and their Kubernetes architecture, and which metrics, and then the performance. And this was basically just testing Nginx in the cloud versus bare metal. And yeah, you can see here that it's about 80% of bare metal. So you're losing about 20% running in a cloud like that. So anyways, they have a bunch of metrics in here. I suggest you check it out. I always love reading these and like just seeing the testing methodology. You know what, the most interesting thing here is probably the testing methodology, because like testing methodology defines so much of what you get and how good it is of data you get. And really, you just have to be in and experience a lot of this to actually even know that. And so it's always great to read other people's testing methodology, because like it gives you an idea of what they were thinking and helps you run your own testing methodology. So really cool. And thanks Nginx for writing this up. Okay, so this was an interesting statement. Almost 30% of new GitHub code is written with AI assistance. Now, I have used Copilot. I wanted to make a video on Copilot, but honestly, Copilot has really sucked for me. I found that if I tried to write code that was like hacker rank code, Copilot worked amazingly. If I was trying to write code that I've seen 100 times, Copilot worked amazingly. I write mostly new code, and it hasn't worked for my operators that I write, and it hasn't worked for my Rust that I write. And so, like, I don't know who's using it and it actually is working well for them. Now, maybe 30% of people have left it on and it just sits there and doesn't do a whole lot. I don't know, because like again, like you don't have to use it even if it's on. It doesn't mean that your code was actually helped by the Copilot, or maybe you're using it as a sanity check, which also again doesn't mean that the AI is really assisting you. But I'd love to hear more. I didn't make the video because I really hate making just like really negative videos, and that's really all I could come up with the Copilot, was that it wasn't actually really useful to me. I actually tried to use it in my day-to-day work, and it wasn't really that useful. It wasn't that helpful. So Yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' feedback, especially if you guys have had really great success for it. I didn't find actual programming to be that useful. Now, maybe it's the programming that I do because I don't make simple microservices a lot of the time. Sometimes I do, and maybe they would work really well for my simple microservices. I know for my operators, it failed completely miserably, and my Rust project, which is a container orchestrator, it also didn't really do well with. So maybe it's just my projects, and it's really actually quite useful to other people. All right, here we got a question. Haven't read through the article, but do you think virtualization is responsible for the loss of performance? There's a lot of things in clouds. There are a lot of things in clouds. So loss of performance can be from a lot of things. You're on a shared network, period. That whole data center is on one, so you can have hiccups in networking. Ask why a database isn't really recommended to be run on EBS storage. And the reason is EBS is network attached storage and can have hiccups where you lose access to EBS for like a second. So there's networking, there's the machines, the VMs themselves are on shared hardware unless if you get like the the M5.metal. You don't actually get a whole machine. You get a section of machine, which is isolated, is a virtual machine. But there's always the hypervisor underneath running on that. So there are VM issues. There's networking issues. There's you're getting a vCPU, which is a virtualized CPU. You're not actually getting a CPU. Then we can talk about the NUMA bus and whether these clouds should be cognizant of the NUMA bus and making sure that your memory is on the same one. I don't know. But yeah, there's actually a lot of stuff from the networking and the network ingress to the virtual computers. That would be an interesting video to make. I can't like put it all in my mind. I'd have to think a little bit more on it. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons why. Hey, Markin. Martin, thanks. That was kind of my impression too. It just felt a little overhyped to me. Yeah, that's again was kind of. I tried to use it, and like I tried to use it in real code, not just. So I watched a lot of videos of people using it not in real code. They were using it in like, oh, we're taking this hacker rank and describing the problem completely and that type of thing, and it worked really well for that. If I could use it in an interview, I'd ace every single interview. It just really failed to work in real code. That's been my problem. I would love to hear other people's thoughts. Thank you, Martin, for chiming in. Don't chime up. I don't know what that sounds horrible. All right, so let's get back to this. Of course, I needed to bring up Rust since I've been talking about it. So the plan for Rust 2021 edition was released back in May. And you're like, well, this is old news, Merrick. You already commented. I just wanted to bring it up so it made context because then is now. So the Rust 1.56 is out, and the 2021 edition of Rust is out. So if you've been looking to update your code, Rust 2021 is out. So yeah, check it out. Huge update and definitely worth looking into. I'm not gonna go over every single detail that's out there for it, but definitely a lot of good stuff in there from the try statements and some array stuff. But yeah, lots of stuff. So we're not going to get into it, but definitely check it out. I'm going to put these blog posts in it. So this one's an important blog post, this one that came back in May, because it kind of lays out how you're going to update to it. And this more lays out what's in the 2021. So I'm going to put both of those in there for you all. All right. This I think is huge. This is one of the biggest things we're going to talk about today, and I don't know why it's so far into it. All right. So, this is massive. If you've ever committed code to Kubernetes, I have done this. It is one of the most frustrating things because you will make a pull request. You'll get 10 people to sign off on it. You'll make a few updates. And every time you make an update, it takes 4 hours for most of the tests to run. Some of the tests might fail, and then you have to do retests, and then they finally pass because there's some flaky tests in the Kubernetes test suite. And then you'll get the okay to merge, and you will need to make a pull or you'll have to rebase, and then you'll have to rerun all the tests. So there's another 4 hours, and the flaky tests might fail. And if the flaky tests fail, you're going to have to retest again, all to get a pull request in. And you hopefully get all of that done before you have to rebase again. This is the pull request merge queue limited beta. Now, it's in limited beta, so this isn't out there for everyone. So it's going to be a little while, but this works to solve this problem. Basically, it builds a queue of pull requests that can all work together so that you don't have to necessarily rebase everything every single time. So it's going to look to minimize the number of times you have to rebase before accepting a pull request. I think that this is absolutely huge. If they pull this off and they pull it off well where people can use it, I think this will make a lot of projects actually way easier to use. I'm very excited about this, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but you know what? This is why you have to watch the entire show, is because I'm going to put the good stuff in the middle of the show. Don't leave yet. There's something better. There could be something better. You don't know. You just need to keep watching. That's I'm a real YouTuber now. Yes. All right. SUSE. As you all know, I used to work for SUSE. SUSE has effectively encouraged their best engineers to leave. But beyond that, they have released SLE Micro, which I think is really cool. They actually had Micro OS, which was something they've had for a long time, and Micro OS was really cool, but it was never part of SLE. Micro OS was like a bare bones container runtime, but it did more than just containers. It was a Micro OS, and they finally brought that functionality to SLES, or their SUSE Linux Enterprise. That's what SLE or SLES is. SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, SLES. SLE and SLES is their enterprise grade server ones, and they finally brought that functionality to SLES. And so this is actually really, really cool, and is really something that would work really well with their K3s solution. So if you guys know what K3s, it's the lightweight Kubernetes from Rancher, which is now owned by SUSE, and it looks like they're building a lot of stuff into this. So if you're looking for an edge, this actually might be a really good edge solution if that's what you're into. We'll talk at the end of this. Will GitHub Copilot take your job articles? I don't want to spend too much time since we're already past that, but I'd love to have a longer conversation on GitHub Copilot. I love GitHub Copilot. I think it's really interesting what people are doing with that. But yeah, execution. We'll talk more about it later. Okay, open source cloud guide right here. This was actually something really interesting from IBM, and one of the cool things is they actually called the community to help them fill it out. They made it open source here on GitHub, and they're actually asking for people to help. So it's on the Apache license, so you can go and check out the GitHub. It's the Apache 2, the Null approved license, that and MIT. And what they're doing is building a guide for open source technologies, I'm actually probably going to make some pull requests to this. I actually really do support this. Actually was thinking about implementing something like this on my website. Might not need to now. But basically, you can go to each one of these sections, and they're building out what open source projects are out there, what the limitations are versus, like their solutions. And some of this stuff is to be determined. But what their limitations are, basically, like, okay, you could go with BigQuery, and what does BigQuery offer that Spark or Kafka stack doesn't provide? And then they put in not only the projects to use, but how to use them, and blogs and stuff like that on how to use these different things. And so then they have containers. And anyways, it's really bare bones right now, but I think that this is a really cool thing that they're doing. So it's pretty cool. They link to a bunch of this stuff. So container registries, container orchestrators, container engines and runtimes. Yeah, anyways, I think this is really cool. The first IBM thing that I've said is really cool in forever. I can't actually remember one. So I don't know if I'm getting more excited over this than it deserves. Again, it's not hardly filled out at this point, but like, I like the concept. I think the concept is good because a lot of times people are like, oh, what container runtimes can I use? Oh, well, guess what? Here's a list. And if we keep this up to date, like the wiki of open source projects, this is a pretty good list. This is not full because there's cryo and this is engines and runtimes. I would say engines and runtimes to separate. But anyways, it's a work in progress. Whatever. All right. Ooh, cool article. Cool article of the day. How we built a forever free serverless. This is advertising because it's a technical article. So there's nothing technical about them offering it for free. That's just how much money they have raised that they can waste on giving it to you. But it's actually pretty cool because it digs into problems like single tenant architecture versus multi-tenant architecture versus serverless architecture, and how they actually build from single tenant architecture to multi-tenant architecture to serverless architecture, how they build on top of each other. And so if you're looking from a technical standpoint, it's actually a fairly decent article to read. How it scales and those types of things. So fairly decent. I would recommend it. All right, we had some questions about eBPF, so I brought up 2 articles about eBPF so we can talk about them. We're going to jump ahead to our open source projects, then we'll swing back to eBPF, have a little conversation about it, and then we're going to also talk about Autopilot. I like to have, this is something we've started having, is just these little conversations at the end. Absolutely love it. Let's keep that up. Notify Fire is an open source project. I haven't used it. I saw it. Wanted to bring it up. It's a notification system. It's supposed to bring notifications. Now, it's written in JavaScript, so we won't hate on them too much for not using Rust. It would have been better if it was in Rust. But it's tying together all of these things because they make an excellent point. Very rarely do you just want a single source. You want push notifications, you want in-app notifications, you want SMS, you want email. And so what they're doing is they're building an open source platform that ties all of these things together. So when you want to notify somebody, you can do it via email, SMS, push, or in-app, or all of them. Yeah. So anyways, absolutely very cool. Solves a real problem. So if that's a problem that you're having, I would check this out. Check it out. All right. So the Oracle database operator. I think I talked about this one other time, but it's basically brand new. And the biggest and coolest thing about it is not that you can run the Oracle database operator, because I don't really care about that. What is cool is how they did it. They open sourced it here, so you can view their license here. Of course, this is under the Universal Permissive License, the UPL. stupid license, but it's Oracle. But what you can do is take this as a learning experience. If you're wanting to run a stateful application, this is a really great one. There is another project that I think is a really great one called the Aerospike Kubernetes operator. If you're looking to have a Kubernetes operator run a stateful set, that's another great one. But a warning there, that is for the company that I currently work for. So generally, I leave the company I work for out of it because yeah, I don't want any conflict of interest. So yeah. Anyways, this is a good starting point. I looked over it. It looks fairly thought out. So, anyways, I wanted to go over this. I didn't break this out. This is actually just a repo list. Now, this person, I actually know this guy, and he has agreed when he has the time to give me an interview. And this guy is super into not only Argo CD, but also Kubeflow. And he is one of the founders of, I forget the new company name, that is going to provide Argo CD as a service. And I begged him and I said, pretty, please give me an interview. And he said, fine, if it would make you stop pestering me. So you can look forward to that in the future. I hope to actually go into a technical interview with him, and I'm really excited about that. But he released this awesome repo called Awesome Argo, and basically it just builds out the ecosystem. So if you're thinking like, oh, what is there in the Argo ecosystem? Well, here's a list of things in the Argo ecosystem. If you're wanting to read books about it, here are some books about Argo CD. If you're looking for blog posts, here's a list of curated blog posts, and this guy knows what he's talking about. So I haven't looked at all these blog posts, but I have seen some of these, and they're probably fairly good. So definitely check this repo out if you're looking into Argo. All right, now let's talk about eBPF. I've gotten some questions about it, and I have quite possibly wanna. It's going to be sometime late November. I have a video that's coming out called "Breaking Kubernetes with eBPF." So I was part of a challenge like 3 or 4 months ago where I was challenged to break a Kubernetes cluster, and my ultimate break, I made several breaks of different difficulties, was I actually loaded a eBPF kernel module into the kernel of one of the nodes to basically just reject all communication from the API server's endpoints. It was brilliant, almost impossible to see. I think it's brilliant because I did it, and I think everything I do is brilliantly stupid most of the time. Anyways, so I'm going to make a video on that and how eBPF is super powerful. And it should be a pretty fun video. But that being said, we've gotten a lot of questions about eBPF, so I wanted to pull up some documentation. Both Cilium, this is by Cilium, this website, ebpf.io, and Calico leverage eBPF. And basically what eBPF does, for those that don't know, is it allows you to run code in the kernel without needing to basically load kernel modules. That's maybe an oversimplification of it, because you do have to load it into the kernel, because it allows for just-in-time verification of the eBPF. So it's super powerful because it allows you to write these apps that are isolated in the kernel that do things like network security, load balancing, can do a ton of different things. I actually have thought about trying to write a web app in eBPF. That's going to be a challenge. Make it respond from the kernel. Complete abomination use of eBPF, but might be fun. Never, not what it's made for though. But yeah, so they use it for security, tracing and profiling, observability, and network. So this is what a lot of them are using, like Calico and whatnot are using it for networking. But Calico and Cilium both provide observability and monitoring and tracing, and they're leveraging this in the kernel in eBPF. So this is what eBPF is. I know that was super simplifying it. These articles are going to be linked in the description of the video, so if you want to follow up and read them, they go into a lot more detail in them, and they have a lot of pretty graphs. So yeah, was that helpful? Read these articles. They're going into it more, and my video that comes out in a month or so, probably the end of this month, because I need to actually, as some of you might notice, I released a video and then I took it down because the video was an abomination. I promised in my mistakes video not to do that anymore, not to second guess myself, but the video was a mistake. And what it was is it tried to do too much too quickly. I've been trying to keep the videos short. And so I was trying to keep the video short and cover a breadth of knowledge, and that just didn't work out. And it was on Kubernetes operators. So it's going to be like 45 minutes. I've reworked on the script, and it's going to be basically a crash course on Kubernetes operators. And that's just how long it's going to have to be. I didn't want to break it up. I don't want to have another series. I just want a single video on it. So it's just going to be a long video. Hopefully you all watch it and appreciate the amount of work I've gone into making it. But that being said, as soon as I'm done with that one, the eBPF one is next. So it's going to be middle to end of November. Yep. So yeah, that's it. And we can talk about Copilot. Do I think Copilot is going to take our jobs? The answer is Copilot, how it is right now, absolutely not. Copilot will not take our jobs. Copilot is probably the best. So this is a problem I've had with hiring in the tech industry as a whole. And if you actually take an interview with me, I don't do it nearly the same as the rest of the industry because I really dislike it. Our tech hiring generally doesn't reflect our day-to-day work ever. I've never actually been in a tech interview that really reflects our day-to-day work. And the problem is Copilot does the interview part really well. And that's where I've found that it works really well. Copilot doesn't do day-to-day work. At least it didn't for me. I tried it. Now, maybe if your services are different, I have a couple microservices and a couple operators that I work on, and I have a Rust project that I work on. And it didn't really work well for any of those. I used it. There was a couple of times I was like, aha, that's cool, and that helped. Those far outweighed the times when I looked at what it did and I was like, this is insanity. So no, I don't think it's going to take our job. The thing that you have to understand, I don't write assembly. I don't think many people write assembly. And all of our stuff gets compiled down into something like assembly. So if you're wanting to tell me that there's an AI that's going to be out there that you can meta program with English and it builds an application, we're still going to be developers. We're going to still know the quirks and how to write that English just in such a way for the AI to build an application in the backend. And we're going to have to know how to validate that and verify it and whatnot. So yes, there are going to be AI-driven platforms that build on top. Now, will they be as efficient? Who knows? We'll see when they get good enough that we can actually start adopting them as languages themselves. But that doesn't mean our job goes away. We still have to program that AI. How we program it and whatnot is still going to be a learning experience. Like Copilot, I think that you could actually leverage it really well. I just need to learn how to use Copilot to actually get it to be useful for me. So I think that will GitHub Copilot take your job? I think that's where people never look at it right. Never have we not had jobs to do. You know, we look at farming. Farming, it used to be like everybody was a farmer because that's how you grew your stuff. And today it's like 1 in every million people are a farmer. We've gotten rid of millions of jobs, and that's so that they can go and do other things than farming. So there's always other jobs to do when those get more efficient. We don't write assembly anymore. We write other things that allow us to more efficient. If we all had to write assembly, there would have to be a lot more software engineers because it would just be harder to write. So again, hopefully all languages make it so that we can write code faster and easier, so that we can actually go on to solving the problems we want to solve instead of solving threading again. Yeah, anyways. All right, everyone. That's it for me today. Any other questions? Any comments on my takes on that? I hope you all liked this. I hope. What do you guys think about moving this to like a live streaming? Like I said, null dev. Do you guys think that might be a good idea so that my long form video content can kind of stay in its own? Because a lot of people that subscribe to this channel subscribe for that and not for this. So I was kind of thinking about just breaking it off. And I would really love to share some of my coding. I think you all liked the Saturday event. I'm going to do that every single month on this channel. I think that it's a fantastic thing to do. Yeah. All right. Well, if you guys don't have any other comments, I know that there is a delay, so I like to give you some delay without just sitting here not doing anything. Just sitting here quietly. Could sip my coffee. The stream should be getting better and better. I actually, because a lot of you guys are interested, I bought some hardware. I got a Stream Deck. Check that out. That's way I can switch between things like that without like looking at off to the side. So I'm hopefully building some stuff out for that. Fun thing with this Stream Deck, which is going to be another video eventually, I have gotten partial Kubernetes support. They have a plugin, so you can write plugins. And so basically you can press a button on my Stream Deck and get a kind cluster created. And then if you press it again, it will delete it and recreate it. So you get a fresh kind cluster. Completely stupid. Not useful, but definitely fun. Definitely fun. So, all right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. I don't see any other comments, so again, this end section is free for discussion. Definitely ask questions during my streams always, but for the news, I tend to like to leave just this end section for just general discussions, a little conversation. But if there are no other discussions, I'm going to let you all go. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your week, and next 2 weeks. Won't be here next week. And yeah, I will see you guys in 2 weeks for news. Hopefully even better stream. I'm going to be working on it. And yeah, have a fantastic week.